All right. We will enter into our budget committee meeting at 6:30 PM. We'll call this meeting to order at 6:30. We already did our flag salute during our orientation. So any adjustments or changes, modifications to the agenda? Anybody would like to make? All right, we have, if none, then we'll go ahead and approve the agenda. And then up next is our election of officers. So we need to elect a chair and a vice chair
And a secretary.
and a secretary for the budget committee.
Secretaries.
Okay, so I would take nominations for the budget committee chair position.
Do I get to nominate? Because I don't think if you show up in person, I think you automatically get to be the chair.
I'll second that.
If you guys like to come swap me places, I will be there in person.
Oh, no.
Any other nominations?
Oh, yeah, I can't nominate. I just want to see what Tracy would say.
Okay.
Tracy Foster.
Oh, okay. Mackenzie nominated Tracy Foster for the chair.
You're awesome, Mackenzie.
Any second?
Second.
All right. All right, do we vote on that? We vote, okay,
Mhm.
so, those in favor? Aye. I can't, were you a yes or a no on that one, Tracy?
Sure.
Unanimously passed for Tracy to be our chair.
Super.
Are there any nominations for the vice chair?
Mackenzie.
Nice, you don't have to do anything,
I
just
know.
make sure she's here.
She'll be here for the next one. It's fine.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
All right. Those in favor?
Aye.
Tracy,
Yeah,
Kenzie, passes unanimously.
Yeah.
And then for secretary, that. Laura,
You can just.
You could just nominate Laura.
oh,
just
can we
appoint her.
appoint, can we appoint Laura Place as the secretary of the budget committee? All right. And then we're going to jump right into the review of the budget message and the proposed budget for 2025 and 2026.
So on page 3 is my budget message. I will just paraphrase it really quickly. Right now I'm presenting this budget with amid ongoing financial uncertainty in the Oregon education system. As of this message, the Oregon legislature has not yet finalized the budget for the 25-27 biennium. They've proposed a funding level of $11.36 billion, which is what we base this budget off of. That is the highest budget for a biennium for education there's ever been. It's actually up almost $1 billion over the last biennium. However, even though this amount is the highest, there are a lot of districts, including ours, that are grappling with increasing personnel costs that are really particularly related to PERS, as well as rising facility maintenance and insurance expenses and a reduction in enrollment. Overall, in the state of Oregon, I believe the reduction between 2020 and 2025 is approximately 5% in the public school overall. So we have prepared this budget with an average daily membership projection of 222. We've included different special revenue streams. Donna's talks about that. One of the things that we did for this budget is when federal funding, we actually reduced our federal funding by 25%. Because we do not know what will happen with federal funding. Our federal funding specifically comes through the Title and IDEA programs. We've heard that there will be no reduction, and then we've heard there is a reduction. So to be on the conservative side, we have reduced that amount, and if we get the full amount, great. Same thing with CRSA. We've done it. That's a particular federal funding. We've done a 20% reduction in that. And we'll talk about the bond debt levy, which we try to keep the same each year. We try not to let it go up and down. We try to just keep it very even for the taxpayers. We worked in the development of this budget. Dawn and I worked closely with each administrator and supervisor. We had them conduct a thorough review of their programs and asked each of them to cut 10% at minimum from their budget. The only, and then Dawn and I spent a lot of time looking at the budget to identify potential reductions or eliminations. The only department that we did not ask to reduce their budget was the maintenance and facilities because of the rising utilities and insurance costs. And you'll see that he probably went up 20%, and that was just to cover our insurance. So in addition, here's a few things I want to read the bullet points in addition to the funding from the state school fund and special revenue grants. This budget incorporates several additional revenue sources, including an increase in the monthly utility payment for strengthening rural families for the preschool housed in the district-owned building. Transportation services provided in partnership with the Willamette Leadership Academy for the 25-26 school year, including rentals of 3 buses. $100,000 transfer from the general fund to support food service programs. An unemployment reserve fund of approximately $238,000 to cover potential unemployment claims. And the interest income has been increased by $200,000 due to additional funds in the local governmental pool. These funds are offset by the transfer to the capital projects. In our capital project funds, we have 3 categories: capital projects, bond projects, and seismic rehabilitation upgrades. During this past year, the district has completed the construction of the CTE building and upgraded HVAC. We've installed in some of our classrooms energy efficient windows and initiated design work for seismic rehabilitation in the fire alarm. This budget reflects the completion of phase 1 of the seismic rehabilitation project, which we're hoping will be a total of 3 planned phases. We will, and at our last board meeting found out, we will have to provide funding for the remaining phases. We even had to provide funding for this phase out of our budget. This budget also includes a $200,000 transfer from the general fund, in addition to the $700,000 transfer from the previous year to support these ongoing upgrades and any other necessary facility improvements. Remaining bond funds will also be allocated for these projects. This budget presented is balanced. We will continue to fund all existing positions, honor employee contracts, and maintain current program levels. A contingency fund of $500,000 is included, along with a beginning cash balance of $6.7 million. However, approximately $1.2 million of the cash balance will be utilized to maintain staffing levels and current program offerings. This budget allows the district to continue providing a full school year professional development opportunities and necessary curriculum and essential building and ground maintenance despite rising costs. As we all know, our ADMW has been in decline over the past 3 years, and the state school support formula has been based on the prior year's ADMW, which enables us to build enabling us to build our cash reserves. Although we have a really large reserve, and I will tell you, ours is probably one of the biggest reserves we have in small schools at this point. And our enrollment has stabilized, but we are going to have to carefully plan how do we use the reserves in a very conservative and a very mindful manner for future needs. This last paragraph, I will just tell you all, is I think one of the most important paragraphs. As is the case for many Oregon districts, this district will need to identify cost-saving measures in order to operate within our budget. For the upcoming year, we will refrain from hiring non-essential positions. Any additional duties from these positions will be absorbed within existing roles, especially in classified, confidential, and administrative positions. While we will expand to include 6th grade at Learn at Home to accommodate more students, we will not hire an additional teacher. Instead, 6th grade at Learn at Home Oregon will be integrated into a blended classroom environment with the 5th grade. This overall approach will help ensure that the continuation of high quality services and program in the district is moving forward. Despite these challenges, the district remains committed to using our resources wisely, ensuring that our students receive a comprehensive education that prepares them to be productive global citizens.
A question. This 1.2 estimated reserve tab, does that include the 10% reduction to requested across the board?
And it goes to me. Now we'll go, there's a lot of numbers here. A lot of numbers, but I think the summary sheets are the better, give you the bigger picture. And I want you to look at 119 Let's go to page 119. 119.
Skipping all the way to the back.
Maybe I start at the back, work forward.
Hmm.
You count the number of pages in a book to see how much you have to read.
Oh.
No. Uh, Funding's based on your student ADM. And I wanted to show you the history of your student population and how your fund balance was created. You'll notice that in 21-22, when you, that was during the pandemic years, you had the learning at home. And you had 934 students. Then the next year it went down to 469, 265, we're figuring about 234, and then we're looking at 222. The way the state school formula works is always looks at the higher of the 2 years. So when you are in 22-23, you're getting funded on 934 kids when you only have 469. So that's where the fund balance came from. And likewise, 23-24, you were at 469 and then went to 265. So you're almost getting double. Now we're at the bottom. And this is where we need to get, how do we match our revenues with our expenditures over time? And that's going to be the goal of the board and administration here. Because you cannot go into a deficit. If you go into also on that page, you'll see the breakdown between the brick and mortar and the learning at home. So just numbers right there. So you have 162 we're projecting for brick and mortar and 60 for learning at home.
Just really quick, Laura, would you admit Russ? I have a question.
Okay.
What is the ADMW they're looking at for this next year? Is it the 265 or the 230?
I'll show you that. I'll show you that on the next page. Okay, no problem. I've done a summary of the state school support, and you can go online, find the same numbers. But what I have here is the top one is the total dollars allocated. The reductions that they make for certain programs, you'll see on there. Then they allocate between the ESDs and districts. 95.5 come to districts, 4.5 go to ESDs. Then they subtract high cost disability students out. And then you come up with a district allocation less the transportation, because districts are funded on a 70, 80, 90% based on where they fit within the state. And we are at a 90% right now, which is great.
Mhm.
That means what you're saying is your cost per student is in the high range because of the number of miles and the number of students you have. A school like, I'll just pick my own school, Canby would be a 70% because they have so many students on a bus and it's a close area. So you don't have that much per student. That comes up with the percent. All of this is a multiplication and they divide the ADM in that, and that gives you an actual rate on the bottom that they're going to multiply times that $4,500. And that was set back in 1994. This formula was developed in 1994. I believe that was the year.
Yeah, it's something.
Because I was working before that. That was when every district some districts had tax bases and some districts did not have a tax base. And if you had a tax base, it automatically increased 6% every year. So they did not need to go out to their taxpayers, while a school like North Clackamas didn't have a tax base. They would have to go out every year to get a vote. And finally they said, hey, we're going to even it out. They came up with every district has a fixed tax rate. It was fixed back in 1994. And so your assessed value or your assessed value or your taxable value, not your market value, is taxed times that rate. If you go to the bottom section, that is where your ADMWs are. And it's made up of those components, ADMR, which I said the 222 if you go to the far right. And then, and I'm using 25, 26, and 26, 27. Because I'm doing a 2-year, just making assumptions that you do not have any more kids. Then these are the categories for each one of these, and I'm pretty sure on that because I went through the board. We got the remote elementary now. We didn't have that before, but when we went down to a certain level of student population, we got the remote elementary ADM, and that's why we got additional money that 1 year. But we're looking at an ADM of 370 0.6 for 25-26 compared to 420-28 the previous year because it was using the 23-24 year. Follow how that works. So we're at the bottom and these two are roughly the same. The base amount is the 4,500. Then you have your teacher experience less, and that was a shocker to me. I was using what was in 20 on one of the estimates. If you go back, we were using 2.3 and now they changed everything because they use the fall report, don't they?
They do, yeah.
Yeah, they use the fall report and they're so far behind in giving you the number because it's the state average. You're compared to all the other districts.
So you get money the more experience you have, and our
Right.
experience dropped.
Right, so if every district dropped the same amount, we would have the same, but it's like some districts have higher experience compared to LC. So we lost $528 per ADM. So that gives us a figure of 4.37150 that we're projecting, what the state is giving us and what we have in the budget, times that amount that I computed up above, gives us that we're getting 10,810,000. I wish it was 10 million. $10,821.32. And next year it'll be around 11,200 based on these numbers up here. Then you'll notice we have $970 of transportation at 90%, $1 million, figuring it's going up 30,000. And then you have your offsets because you look at your property taxes, you have to consider your property taxes that you pay is just a prepayment to the state school support formula. Some districts have higher property taxes, so they get less from the state. But their funding is still based on that formula amount. Okay. Did I explain that correctly? So with that in mind, our total dollars that are from the state is 4,306,000, but the local monies from the formula are going to be 577,000. Okay. You'll notice over here in column the far left, we got paid $6,401,000, but the formula now is 625, and I've been reflecting that in the financial statements. I think it was on the last one, and that was strictly due to the experience. We lost 126,000 right there. It comes and it goes.
Can you clarify the experience numbers? Like the higher number is less experience?
Well, you get $25 per, that's the base. And if you have a higher experience, you'll have a positive number. If you have a low experience, you'll have a less number. And if you look at the salary schedule, you'll see the BA1, BA2, those are lower paying. that's trying to adjust to where people are on the salary schedule.
So is that like a -5 versus a -2?
That's a -5.
Yeah,
So then my next question, reading from there is, your 26-27 estimate is bumped up a bunch. Do we
2.3.
assume we're gonna have, the K-9 teachers not all gonna have another year of experience?
that is an assumption, but that could change.
No,
Yeah, I
that's a good point. I guess I didn't change my formula. I, we could make that assumption, but it should be 5. It would make it look worse. Do you follow?
Yeah.
Yeah, but.
I just saw that change. I'm like,
Yeah.
No, that's a good eye, because you'll notice we have been given 2.3 all the way along, and then they changed it on me. The last 2 in the last month.
Mhm.
And so that, I didn't catch that. But if that was 5.14, I still multiplied it out right. That 2.3 is still a 5. Because look at the 126.50 and the 128.50, they're only $2 off. I need to look at that. I don't think it's my multiplication. There's something wrong in that formula. See that, Soren?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll look at that. But that's 26-27 anyway. We have no idea. A lot of these numbers could switch
Mhm.
around. But it's giving us the basis to look at how you're using cash in 26-27. I just printed these sheets off. You can look at them on the web too. I won't go over them. That's what we get. And Jamie was on there right now looking at all of them. I mean, they're on there. You can find them all. So these are the latest ones, and the dates are at the top there. And this is the 25-26 if you want to go on the web. How does this reflect the district? If you go to page 124, putting these numbers in here, and if you add the 5.57 and the 5.79, I didn't have the column there set up right. That's 11.36. That would be your biennium billion that they have based it on so far, but it hasn't been adopted. Going down the line, these are the numbers coming from the other sheet, the 4,000,003 and the 575, and these are the projections here for 26-27. Those are only projections. You'll notice in the local resources, we've increased it by, compared to previous years in budget, by 200,000, because you'll see the budget there of 158,000 before. Now we're doing it 363. 200 of that is the increase in interest. But as you use your cash, remember that number can't stay there. It was a way to make up for losses. That's why you never budget all your interest. I've never done that because you never know what's going to happen to the market. You never know what's going to happen. But there's a significant amount of dollars there that I feel secure. And if those dollars, what we're doing is increasing this by 200,000 and putting the transfer of 200,000 in there. They kind of go hand in hand to go for maintenance. Okay. For your phases. These numbers down below are just adding all those categories, the 200s, the 100s, the 300s, the 400s, and the 500s. And you'll come to a budget total expenditure of 6,987, 6,987, compared to what it was in 21-22, 11,948 when you had a high ADMW. And that means we're using 1,000,007, but 500,000 of that is contingency, which you haven't touched before. So really, in reality, you're using 1,000,002, and that's where Krista came up with that in the budget message. Any questions on that? That's just giving you an overview before we go into the detail. I think it helps you see the big picture.
So I have a question. With this trending downward and making the assumption that we're gonna lose 1.2 at least. when do we start looking, or like, is the hope that we would not hire? And so that would start to kind of make that discrepancy up? I'm just gonna say it, are we looking at another reduction in force? Like, what does that look like for our district? Because at some point, this isn't going to equal out, it's like, we're gonna go into a deficit.
So if we looked, we've kind of projected, if we continue to use the current FTE in 4 years, you will have nothing in reserves. So that's why we're doing I'm freezing the hiring. We're gonna have to absorb. I know that's really hard for people, but when you lose kids, it opens people up to do other things. We've already have done some absorption. I've absorbed administrative positions. When we hired, we haven't hired at the same salary scale. Just we're looking overall where we could do. We had an elementary teacher left. Instead of hiring an elementary teacher, we blended a classroom, so that saved money, and we're going to continue that. And so we're looking a lot at numbers. But if we do continue at the current FTE that we're at in 4 years, this district will literally have no money in the reserve.
So, I know that often there's this conversation around enrollment.
Mhm.
Board like that. Trending wise though, if this, we have a great reserve right now.
Mhm.
But are all districts in Oregon seeing that same reduction, that same 5% kind of reduction? That no matter what innovative strategies we use, while we should still consider them, we would still possibly see that our enrollment would just pop up.
No.
necessarily.
And if you look at, so for example, in Lincoln County, they're actually looking at a 4% reduction over the next 5 years, mostly because of the birth rates. The birth rates are really going down. And so I believe the superintendent told me 4 years ago, they had something, I don't remember what it was, but their kindergarten class in 5 years has cut to about 96, about 90%. So you are seeing a lot of that birth rates are not coming, and they're actually considering going down. I know Corvallis said they're projecting their enrollment next year to be the same enrollment that they had in 1958.
We're
And
expecting a COVID baby boom.
well, I think
That would
we
be
kind of already
nice.
had it. Yeah.
Shoot.
So really, in reality, I think that if we plan our money well, and again, I truly am not a huge RIF fan. I think you lose by attrition. But it's really hard because people say, well, if you're asking me to do more, you need to pay me more. The problem is we're not asking you to do more with more kids. We're saying we can't sustain the level of position that you have with the number of kids that we currently have. The hard part in our budget, and Dawn and I think we're actually at the bottom, is that if you look at a lot of districts, especially if you go look at the state school fund estimates, you'll notice a lot of their 2-year projections are only off by 1 or 2 kids. Ours swung so high, and now we're swinging low. That because of that high swing, that's why we have this. We do not have, if you look at our reserve is like 110% of our actual budget. Most people's reserves are 5%. And so this is where I think it's important for this board and this budget committee to really say, like, how are we budgeting and asking those really hard questions? Because if you don't, and we continue to do business as normal, this district will go bankrupt in 4 years.
I guess I'd rather make the hard discussions happen now where we're projecting rather than getting into that.
And that's why, like I said, it's important to look at ratios of enrollment, teacher to student, things like that.
I'm so used to it where I'm at. We always blended 2, 3.
You'll see that for a period of time. We haven't got people on that
Yeah.
process.
And that's conversations we're looking at. It's not always like the most ideal, but I think that's piece of it. And especially when you talk about, if a kid is 10-5 and a teacher with, a salary and benefits are 75, 80,000, you have to have a minimum of 8 kids in a class to pay that teacher. And that doesn't include transportation, food, administration, things like that. So really, again, as I said in my budget message, we're not hiring unless it's an essential position. And people are gonna have to understand that if you don't want to increase what you do with your job, then your hours will have to decrease. So those types of things, so.
What is the understanding? Oh, no, you're just fine, go ahead.
The ratio, the normal ratio would be for.
Right now, we are about a 1 to 12, and that's what I'm trying to keep it at, even at the high school level. Pretty much if a class at a high school, junior high does not have a minimum of 7 kids, we will not offer it.
But it's the max.
According to our charter, the max is 23.
This isn't really unusual. I mean, our enrollment is always, been low.
Mhm.
I mean, since these kids were in school. You didn't go to school here. My kids, yeah.
But-
So,
Do have to get back, I mean, a couple years ago, there was talk about this payback, like everybody was scared that we were gonna have to do some sort of
Mhm.
payback because we had such inflated numbers. But this is where we're seeing it, we're seeing our cliff, so we have to get strategic
Yes.
and we have to figure out how we start operating at that lower level again. Because we don't have all those extra.
Well, we
COVID
were-
funds and all those extra COVID kids.
we were so overemployed here the last few years that it was just ridiculous.
Well, and we don't want to come, there are a lot of school districts in Oregon that all of a sudden February rolls around and they're like, okay, we're gonna have to cut $4 million and we have to cut by the
More
end
than
of this
that.
year. We had one, I think, had to cut 8.
Well, I was working with West Lynn, they cut 45 teachers. Just think of that.
We'll say on 40%.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so I think you have an opportunity to look at what your model wants to be with the funding, and you can get there.
But yeah, we don't ever wanna put this district in a place where come March, we're like, wow, we're not gonna make payroll. So that's why I think it's an opportunity for us to all be
Yeah,
strategic.
and I think you're safe for 4 years. It's just,
Mhm.
you need to plan it.
I think we have to start hard conversations somewhere.
Yeah.
The public needs to start hearing the hard conversations being had.
Yeah,
Mhm.
just like I keep talking to you about food service.
I was just gonna talk about food service because I think that's a huge expenditure.
It is, but if we got more kids to participate, that dollar goes up.
But yeah, I know,
the
but
expense
we
goes
didn't
down.
have that when our kids were in school and our kids paid for our lunches and, I mean, like, I don't,
And they
sometime
didn't
I
eat
don't
breakfast at school either.
I didn't understand, I don't
Yeah.
understand
That's
this.
just one day,
Well, it also,
Pardon me?
we only have lunches one day a week.
Uh,
It's Wednesdays.
no.
Parents came in and made lunch Wednesdays.
Can we
That was
go on the budget?
Well, let's go on the budget. Yeah.
We go on the
I
budget.
can talk to you about that, Cheryl.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
okay,
side conversation.
Yeah.
Sorry.
that's okay.
Page 10. Going back, I'm not gonna go over the funds and all that.
Pardon me?
I wanna go over this is the summary page,
We're on to page 10. I thought we-
page 10, there's probably a hole through it. I have to figure out how to get, Laura's laughing at me, but anyway. This is the summary of resources by the major funds. Remember, we give it in detail, but for meeting appropriations and the law, it goes by major area. These are your major. And you'll see the local, your intermediate are like the ESDs and counties. State is what is defined. And then 4,000s are your federal, and you'll see they're all defined over there, how you have to do it. As you can see, our proposed budget for the general fund is only going down 10,000, because we have moved dollars, we've increased the revenue by 200,000 for the interest and various things like that. You'll see the major reductions is in our special revenues, and Krista will go over those when we get in there. And the capital projects, we finished a lot of those projects already, because that was dealing with your bond.
Yeah.
And part of the awesome grant, so that's why that's gone down. And then your internal is putting more dollars in there for the unemployment. But hopefully, if you don't have to spend those, you won't have to put any more dollars. And that will just free up dollars.
Quick question.
Yeah.
For the capital funds, so one of the conversations we've had recently was within our, seismic.
Yeah.
Is there, I mean, I see like the proposed beginning
Mm-hmm,
is at 840.
mm-hmm,
Is this where we can create a new
mm-hmm.
budget line and appropriate funds in here to say like, this is actually going to be our yearly maintenance or I guess
Whatever it
we wouldn't
might be.
want
Like reserve
like
fund.
a reserve fund, like. we wouldn't want it to-
Reserve for maintenance is annual. That's a
Yeah.
term, annual.
Okay,
Capital projects means it has a life over a certain period of time. So
Okay.
you would be talking like roofs,
yeah. so we could
HVACs.
actually move money in there and then say like the board or the budget committee as a whole.
or a
could say, like,
transfer.
Could say, we want to keep. This would be a lot, but if we want to keep $500,000 in there every single year, and then we only spent 100 one year, we'd move just 100 the next year. So we could, and then that would help pay for, would that help pay for things like additional needs from the seismic grant or things like, is there anything that would be?
Totally.
That?
No, it's dealing with facility.
So we could, start kind of planning now for additional upgrades down
Right.
the road that we would need. We just need to we would need to appropriate that.
Yeah, and
Here.
you can do it by the budget committee can do that by a resolution.
So like you could put like, so one of the conversations we had at the last meeting for the budget committee is we were wondering about the roofs. And so how long does the roofs have? And so we're gonna have somebody come out and look at the roofs, but if you don't have any money saved up and all of a sudden you have to replace a roof at $100,000, what do you do? And so the idea perhaps would be create like a roof replacement fund or a capital replacement fund where each year the board would say, we're gonna keep 300,000 in it. So if there's anything like, if the HVAC system goes bad and their insurance doesn't cover it and it costs us 250,000, then you don't have to scramble to get a loan. You have that money already in there.
It's designated for that.
Mhm.
It's designated for that. And then if while we have the reserve right now, we could move a agreed upon fund in there and then each
You
year.
could create
we could-
another fund.
Oh, or we can always keep it balanced up to that.
You
right
can
now,
keep the
so that
400
hopefully
one,
we-
right.
we wouldn't, hopefully we wouldn't spend that much. It would just be an incremental move then in the future, but
Right,
it
but
would be a thought.
In the event that we appropriate the funds like that, and something else happens, we can always do a resolution
Totally.
to undo.
yeah, you can always use it,
Okay.
however, by board direction.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you.
But you only need to do a resolution during this when you approve the budget. Because you're only approving the budget, the board is adopting the budget. So if this committee wants to make a resolution to add a line or whatever, you can do that.
But currently, we've been spending and it's been going down.
Yeah,
But that had all of our that had all of our additional like bond dollars and things like that, correct?
right. That had the bond and the awesome grant.
Okay.
We'll go over that. Page 11 and look at these on your time, but and ask questions, but this is comparing your major functions for the general fund and where they went down or went up. And then on the next page is special revenues, debt service, capital projects, and that we'll go over those individually. I'm giving it to you in a different view for the general fund by salaries and payroll. That's on page 13. Contracted services, supplies, you'll see the reductions there. And then again, special revenues. Salaries go down because our grants are gone down, so people had to be moved into the general fund. Okay. And that goes back here, if you went back to, I'm jumping around, but if you went back to page 125. That is your change in FTE. You'll notice this is the number of FTE that you have. We reduced the budget by almost 5. There's admin at 7, licensed at 21 almost, and classified at 24. For a total of 51, almost 52. And if you go to the last page, that is what has been reduced out of the budget. The staff, and those are not people through attrition or a position that we didn't fill. And we took them all out of the budget. So, okay. Like, we can go down those. The bus was Carmen's position when she retired, and that was absorbed by Keena. And then you, the teacher, we don't need to go, that was a teacher here, and the same at Learning at Home, that was a teacher there, and that was a vacant position that we budgeted that we didn't need. Same with the early literacy, and then that's a retirement for the classified person. Okay. That were in the budget and not in this upcoming budget, okay? Yeah, that's how you do it.
Always nice if you do it that way.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
On the general fund, do you have any questions? I kind of going through these because I want you to look at them and then come back with a lot of questions.
What page are you going back?
I'm going to go to page 37. And Krista, please jump in.
You're doing a great job.
Oh, yeah. I also gave you it by object. Give it to you in all levels, so you can look at it in all different ways. It might come up, but when we talk about insurance, in the 650s, it went up 16%. Went from 108 to 126,000.
The next page.
Yeah, I was just, Krista mentioned that.
And what kind of insurance is that?
It's our casualty and liability on buses, errors and omission, you name it.
We actually had to add a new insurance this year. It was a sexual abuse and misconduct insurance that all districts are
Same
required
place.
now to have. Yep. So we actually had to add another insurance as well.
And that's all lumped into the.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's all. It's in different areas of the budget. Some of it is in 250 transportation. Some of it is in,
This is based, it's just pop.
this is all the general fund combining the objects rather than having to look at each one. This is
Mhm.
looking at all the 650s, 653s added together in the general fund. And I think it's a good way of looking at it.
But I think it's fair to also then say that all insurance are increasing.
Yeah.
That's not just for school, that's everybody's.
Oh,
Insurance in
everybody's.
General, across the
Yeah,
board.
yours is increasing.
Yeah.
Why, yes, thank you.
Mine.
But that's what I mean, like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
that's not necessarily even direct to schools.
No, it's everybody.
Yeah.
You just have to look at the fires and the earthquakes and everything else, and we're all
The
paying for
amount
it.
of what everything costs. to
Yeah.
fix.
Well, and the other one, if you want to look on page 37 at 325. You can see that our electricity, actually, we're budgeting 68% more.
Yeah.
Because we added the CTE building and stuff that goes with it. And so we noticed that we went from somewhere around 3,000 a month to almost 6,400 a month. Wow. But we noticed, if you notice, our fuel went down a lot.
Because we're gonna-
Your oil.
Your oil, yeah, because we no longer have the boilers. And
Oh,
so one of the pieces would be, is we're trying to also, how do we become more energy efficient? How do we use our windows? And so those are types of things that we're balancing as we go.
Yeah.
But I wanted to point that out, that the electricity has gone up quite a bit. We've been monitoring.
I want to point out another one. 232 is your unemployment. You'll notice in 22-23 you spent 60,000 out of the general fund. Then you spent 120,000. Those were the claims we were getting at 35,000 each quarter. And so we adopted, because of the new laws and everything, and we were getting all those claims, we set up that reserve and budget that. Now we're only proposing 75,000, which is a reduction. Hopefully the reserve is good enough to cover down the road. We can lower it in 26, 27 to a lot less than that. So that would save dollars too, once we know the history
Mhm.
of what's happening.
Well, and it should be down because your staff's down.
Right, it's gonna go, and yeah, hopefully it could be very minimal in the future with that reserve there.
So may I ask a question about unemployment during holidays and times that school is not
You're
in
talking to the wrong
session?
person.
I did not pass that law.
I did not, you don't know how my steam comes out my ears.
No. Now I forgot. what I was gonna ask.
Holidays and in session.
Yes, so are teachers also included in that?
Only
No.
classified staff,
Holy crap.
Okay,
only hourly staff, yes.
okay, okay. So now, because I really thought that, I mean, maybe it might have been only certified staff that had their salaries like, you know, all year round paid. I mean, you know, when school was on it. Yes. So what that never
Sort of
was
classified.
for classified?
Classified, we do the same thing to make sure everybody's on the same, but it was a bill for anybody who worked hourly, because what they were saying is if you work hourly and you get paid hourly, that that you don't necessarily get the same benefit as if you get paid a salary. So you don't get paid as much.
So what happens to their benefits during the summertime, like
You have to keep them.
their health, they have
You
to pay
keep
for
them.
that out
No,
of pocket?
no. If we have to do it as a school district, so even if they do an unemployment over the summertime when they're in recess, because of how you can't take their benefits away.
Yeah, they still have benefits.
Mhm.
Does that sound a little,
Teachers salary then?
Yes.
Yeah.
So they cannot. apply
Right,
for
their
that.
salary, they're exempt.
So when the hourly are on summer break,
Mm.
don't they have to be looking for employment then?
That is part of the employment piece, and most districts can offer like jobs. However, because what we've heard is because the employment department is so backed up, they don't necessarily enforce that particular rule.
They're enforcing it very strongly now.
but I still don't understand the health benefits for the whole thing. I mean, like when
Mhm.
other people go on unemployment, I
Mhm.
mean, you lose all benefits.
Yeah.
It's part of the law. It's just part
So
of that piece.
why is that kind of a weird law for non-person, I mean, like people laymen, like we work down in other periods.
Well, like when logging companies shut down for fire season early or whatever, they're off a couple of weeks. They don't lose their benefit during that period. I think you have, what is it?
You have
30 or
about
30
30
days.
usually.
You have to be unemployed for
But
30
you're looking like
days.
a lot more days than 30 here.
Summers
Just like
really
maybe a
go.
summary
not
of
that long.
that,
Well,
the benefit.
you're going-
look at it, 2.5 months.
How it works,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Middle of
how it
June,
works.
the end of
I can't
August,
get, I don't,
so
I
maybe
can't
I'm
give you
gonna
names or anything.
No,
No,
I'm
I'm
just
just
looking for
barely
like just the
over.
information to go back to, so we can get back.
I
to
don't know.
numbers,
I just
so
don't
we can
Yeah.
feel
figure
that.
it
Back to the numbers.
So how about this,
No.
guys? I will work and I'll send out answers to that. I'm not sure why, Cheryl, but we have been told that if we, because it was something that really came up during the time. And we were told that even with this law passing, that you can't give up the benefits. And even when we were 10-month employees, they still paid for their benefits throughout the summer. So their checks were lower. Instead of getting paid 12 months, we said, okay, we'll pay 12 months of your insurance, but your premium is only gonna come out at 10 months.
Wasn't there something in there though, when you're filling it out, I think I saw recently.
So let's get back to the numbers here.
Oh.
And then, but.
I will
they're
do
gonna
research,
tell
But
us-
this is a discussion I think needs to take place.
Yes,
But
but I will
maybe
tell you,
more-
there's really nothing in the law that says that if they go on employment, we can take their benefits
So
away.
what I'm saying though, because they're guaranteed a
Mhm.
job come August, September.
Then you reinstate it.
There's something in that maybe they don't have to necessarily look for work in the unemployment because they're guaranteed reemployment. There was something, and we would have to go. to
I will
council.
ask, I will bring information.
So yeah, I wanted her to
Yeah.
get us information
Hold on.
on that.
Here's Tracy.
My understanding is that when we, because like my employees, if I have to lay them off, they still keep their benefits as well. It is, if we lay them off and it's a temporary layoff for not necessarily seasonal work, but because ours can be considered seasonal work, the layoff is different than I'm laying you off because there's literally no work for the foreseeable future. It's different. It's a different layoff and a different type of workman or of unemployment that you're seeking. So it makes a difference when you file your paperwork, what is said and the reasoning that's given. And that's why our employees keep their benefits when they go on unemployment.
Yes. there's
Temporary. And that's what makes the difference. The same with the school. It's temporary. So it's a different unemployment you're seeking. Is what it is.
Because they do say like, we're just recessing, we're not laying you off for not a job. They will come back.
But are you asking how the
yeah.
benefits are budgeted?
Yeah,
I think that's the question.
Say it
I mean, like,
How
We're
we're
able to cover.
how we're able to cover, not the law, not that we're in statute law. Yes? Or-
right. I'm talking about like, let's say for that month and a half or 2 months
Uh-huh.
that they're off. I mean, like, so the school, I mean, that's a lot of money. I mean, like premiums for each person for a month and a half.
Mhm.
And we're still paying it. I mean, like, I know that because when I worked and I did, that kind of a business, if we laid somebody off,
Mhm.
or I don't know, however, not, they did have if we paid their benefits 1 month in advance, they did have their benefit
Mhm.
because it's already been paid for.
Mhm.
But let's say the other month that they're not,
Mhm.
it was not paid for anymore.
It's called Cobra.
Yes,
But
and they had to
the
pay for it
statute now
themselves.
Says that you can't.
But I was just.
Well, but yeah, it's the same, but because it's a recess and they're saying they're coming back. So when we budget, and Dawn, tell me if I'm incorrect. When we say like, for example, if a classified employee costs $25,000, we know this is how much we pay as a district per month for their insurance stipend plus everything else. So we budget for classified staff, I'll be honest with you, their benefits are pretty much about 95% of their salary. Is that about correct? So if
I
we
would say
budget
at
$20
least.
$25,000 for a classified staff member, their benefits, PERS, all those things are about $25,000. So we automatically budget $50,000 for that particular piece. So that's why, but it also depends too, if they are, they go down to 0.75, then everything changes here. So that's why the FTE is so important to know about how that works. But because we're laying them off and saying you will have a job when you come back, that's why their benefits continue.
One thing I can do is, you have to make the assumption that just say, all the classified go on unemployment. What would that cost the district during the recesses for the year? That's what the budget should do,
Mhm.
right? And I'll try to do a computation on that. Maybe this is high and we can lower it.
Mhm.
But let me do a computation on that. Because that would be what I would say, your financial exposure that you want to cover. And that would be the amount that you want to keep in that reserve. In case, because when, I'm not saying all of them would go, but if a person knows that it's available, it's just the new law, or we're gonna go on it. And so, we're talking about, I just figure that's the exposure that the district has that should be in that reserve. What that computation is, and that would help answer the question too, and you can get the details.
And I'll get the details too. I see what you're saying, Cheryl, but I'll get the
Okay.
details on that. But I'll tell you, most districts are having these reserves. Corvallis last year spent $1.2 million on unemployment out of their general fund.
How many hourly employees are there versus?
It was 24.
24.01.
Yeah, 24.01, that's the FTE.
Yep, that's
Yeah,
classified.
Classified, all classified or hourly.
Okay, sorry.
And-
That's in the back page.
Yeah, and remember unemployment benefits go to 40 hours. So if, up to 40 hours. So let's say, for example, even if I offered a summer job and they took it and it was only 20 hours, they could still ask for 20 hours of unemployment. So it's the amount of time that you get for your job. If your summer doesn't go that far, you still get that unemployment, that difference.
And also, person quits. Doesn't get another job, they file for unemployment.
Oh, I know that.
So
If they
as you
quit.
know, if we.
Yeah,
have-
if they quit, you can still, they have a penalty of 2 weeks, but then they'll
Yeah,
get it.
so if we have a teacher here that
Yeah.
quits, not retires. Then they claim, we have somebody still claiming unemployment from, it goes for
Was it
so many,
36 months or?
36 months. Yeah,
Is
We-
somebody retired?
No,
no, if
quits.
they quit
Yeah.
and can't find work, they can get unemployment for 36 months. So.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have a question about 792, the bus replacement fund. Are we looking at having to buy another bus next year, or is it just money we automatically transfer just in case?
in case.
How do
In
you come up
case,
with that?
we're not, no, but you put the appropriations in there to ensure it's something happens. Yeah,
I'm just curious about how you know about that specific.
to balance the budget. Based on the number of dollars that were available. I'll go over that when I get to that. I'll go over that one specifically. Okay. 43. I'm gonna have Chris to go over these. These are the grants.
You can see in 203 and 205, there is a reduction. Those are federal funds and like I said, we've been hearing kind of some, no, they're not gonna reduce. Yes, they're gonna reduce. I reduced 203 by 25%. And if we don't get reduction of 25%, great. We're hoping it stays at 60, but we're not sure. I'd rather reduce and then get more money. Same thing with 205, we reduced by 20%. IDEA 210 is a federal grant, we reduced by 25%. But what we're hearing is it may not go down that much, if at all,
Can I say one thing?
always.
203, just for your information, and 210. Those funded employees, so they had to move into the general fund.
Okay.
Come on, Cheryl.
I'm
Get
lost,
the
Dave.
program. We're on 43.
We're on 43.
Yeah.
I'm going, we're jumping around too fast here for my.
227, you can see that it stayed the same. We are at, each grant that ODE does has a floor limit. We are at the floor limit for the early literacy grant, which means no matter how big or small, or if we get any smaller, we will always get that number. 248, we reduced due to our ADMW. I will tell you 248 is an employee. Or it funds employees, so right there, some of that money had to move into the general fund. 251, the student investment account, so the SIA account is based off ADMW. We have been getting a gob amount of money because we had a high ADMW. And now we're going down to where I actually think we should be. But you can see it's almost it's over a $300,000 reduction. So a lot of that we had to take some FTE and actually put it back into the general fund, as well as supplies. There were some programs that we had to completely no longer fund because we didn't have the money for it. So this was part of the integrated guidance piece that I presented. Same thing with High School Success Act. That had to do with our number of the high schoolers, ADMW. We're going down. We think if our level stays where it's at, those will be the numbers we'll move forward with, which is actually more realistic for us than the previous numbers had been. Soren, if you look at 290,
Yeah, I was gonna go over that.
perfect, because I don't really understand that well, but
Oh, that's okay.
love it.
Why don't we go back to? Hold on. Let's go back to page 94. I think it's all on 94. Yeah. That's the detail. Page 94 is the detail of the transportation. This fund includes all dollars related to the replacement of buses. And we have been leasing, WLA leases buses, so that's your principal and interest they pay us back. So you'll notice in the revenue, that is the revenue is offsetting the principal and interest that they're paying. However, part of state school support formula is that you get reimbursed on depreciation, 90%. And we have to put that money into a capital reserve. You can't use the depreciation as to maintain the general operation of the district. It is to be used as a replacement of equipment. And any bus you buy, you depreciate it over 10 years. So say a bus costs $165,000. They give you $16,500 each year times your reimbursement rate of 90%. And you need to put that money into this fund. So we have to put the money that we get from the WLA buses and our buses goes in here as a revenue. Also, what's happened is another revenue stream is that we have 3 buses that were fully depreciated, but we're renting to WLA because they can't afford new buses. So they're paying us
Is it there?
$36,000 to rent those buses. So we're putting that money back into this for future. And it was 12,000 per bus, wasn't
There's something like that, yeah.
it? Yeah, whatever.
Is that per year or?
Per
Yeah.
year, right.
Because they're older, they're 10 years old.
Yeah.
And at this point, they're probably looking, we're looking to replace them, but they don't have the money to replace them and we're not giving it them for free. So they're renting from us while they save money to do replacing.
Right. It's 36,000 they're renting those buses for.
And that would be in here somewhere.
It's in the revenue side. You're looking at the expenditure, but it's the revenue. Each one of the special revenue funds have to self-balance. They're their own fund, but in budgeting, you only show the appropriation side. The revenue side, if you went to page 44. This is all the special revenue funds right here, added into one. So if you see the 36,000 there, that is part of the 290 that's going in.
Mhm.
I mean, I could print this off and make this budget,
The
300
rentals, it says
pages.
the rentals,
Yep,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's buses.
yep,
yeah,
that's coming to us.
that's coming to us from WLA.
It's up at the top at 1910.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And you can see it's 000 because they did not rent from us because they were depreciating. And now the buses are fully depreciated. And so they're renting them from us.
For the 2025-2026.
Yep.
Yes, uh-huh. So they might not rent them the next year, we will just sell them. Or whatever.
Because how we came up with that rental number is Keenan actually went on and said, if we sold these buses, what could we get for them? And it was $12,000 per bus.
They're old buses. They run and their mechanic maintains them. And we gave them the option. I gave them what a cost of a new bus would be. And what that would cost them, cash flow, and because they bought 2 this last year. They had how many on the lot that were working?
They had 3 that were on the lot
They
that
finally
were.
got rid of them. That they were paying insurance on.
How many buses?
5. Plus we have 3. Mackenzie, does that seem right? 5?
Yeah.
Plus we have 3 vans and a type 20.
Yeah. Going back to, that was on 43, was it?
Yep.
Did that answer your questions, Art?
Somewhat on.
Yeah, send the email. Yeah. But
The numbers
how,
right here. I mean,
how I balanced it was I put the money in there because in case you needed a bus. The reserves are there.
just what we were talking about for our groups or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We already put in whatever's left, put it in there.
Right, so it's really, the revenues that are generated from there is from the state school support fund, the depreciation and the rent. And the interest on the balance in there.
And right now buses are running between 175 and 200.
Mhm.
Yes,
Yeah.
for a while.
And it's more economical to buy it than lease it.
Mhm.
And pay interest. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then $2.99 is your nutrition program. That's shared with the board on that before. That's the transfer from the general fund to maintain that program. And we're a CEP program where everybody can eat free and get reimbursed, and there's about a 65% participation on both the breakfast and the lunch when it's free. So there's 35% that could be eating free that aren't.
And the issue, we put 100,000 in there. We, this year we're estimating we're only gonna use 52 of it.
Mhm.
But a majority of that is because, one, we pay $38,000 to Corvallis to help us run our program. And two, when you look at the cost of food, the reimbursement rate is actually not going up at the same rate.
She can't serve pizza.
Because we can't serve pizza all the time, actually anymore. There was
No,
some,
next year
they won't reimburse you on pizza or tortilla chips.
Yeah.
So there goes Miss Neerot's lunches.
So no nachos, no pizza.
Baked potato bars.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where we get money for like commodities, so we're really working on how do we use what we get for free. We get like 10,000 every year for commodities. How do we use that to help lower our cost? One of the major reasons we're having trouble lowering it is because we have a warming kitchen and not a cooking kitchen. So we could probably cook a lot more for less homemade stuff, but because we don't have the capacity to do it, we do a lot of warming, so it's a lot of the more expensive already pre. We're working on it.
102.
Can you shop at the?
Page 102.
Yes, please.
It's just so many numbers are thrown at us.
I'm sorry. I don't know how to do a budget without numbers.
Turns out.
Yeah, we figured that out.
Can you draw me a picture next time?
I'll bring a graph next time.
Sorry. I'm going.
No. 102 and 103 is your levy. And the payment schedule for it. And you'll notice I highlighted what is 25, 26. Your principal, you're gonna be paying 40,000 and interest is 60,000. So it's gonna be a total of 100,000 that we're paying that year. And the agent Zion, the one that you asked who that invoice was for, that's Zion, that handles this payment.
Okay.
Okay. And Krista checks everything. And so that you'll see it goes through 2045. That bond. Okay. You go to the next page. I think one of the goals of the business manager in the district is to keep the rate as flat as possible. You don't want the levy amount to go up and down as people look at their tax payment. And we're assuming assessed value by statute goes up 3% annually. And right now your levy rate was 93 cents per thousand this last year. And the assessed value in the district was 105 million. increasing that to 108. Going over here on the far left, having the year, I'm projecting a beginning cash of about 30,000, 31,000. And then, coming up with a revenue of 97,000 and other revenues, that would be your interest and various things, your bond payment, your ending balance. We would need a levy of 104,000 to make that work, because you always have you have the on your levies, if you pay by, what is it, November 15th, you get a 3% discount. Most people pay. Then there's the uncollected. So you usually use a 94% rate and that's what I'm doing over here. You usually use a 94% in figuring your revenue, because that takes the 3% discount, roughly a 3% uncollected.
But if people do remodels and their taxes go up exponentially double,
Yeah,
you're bound to pay. More will go to it because of that.
yeah, well, that your assessed value will go up right.
So our property taxes double. So now I'm paying double the fee, so you're collecting more, so wouldn't at some point, because you're collecting more taxes, that maybe it could go.
No,
No, because they can still raise you 3%.
yes,
And we're
the
still-
assessed
yeah.
value,
But if I didn't do what I had, I would be paying a lot less, so I paid.
but other
twice.
people would be paying more. See, let's go over here on the the assessed value in 23, 24 was 100 million. Almost 101 million, then it went up to 105. These are actual numbers. Well, you made it go up higher, you're part of that 105 increase, it was higher than 3%. I could use a 4%, or what I'm just using an assumption that it's going to go up 3. That's going to be,
Oh, so that's why that went up.
yes. Yeah, so then this 108 is divided into your levy to come up with your per thousand rate. So if I said this was 4%, the rate would be less. But I always keep it 3% going up. It might go down, which would be great. You might pay less per thousand. You're still gonna be paying more because your assessed value is higher.
Right.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I can't lower that part. But what you'll notice through this, hopefully the assessed value goes up higher than this 3%, and it never goes, it stays at 93 cents the whole time.
Mhm.
That's Benton, yeah, the two counties.
That are paying for it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because we have
there's
some in Lane.
You have a small portion in Lane, not much.
That's mine.
I know, but
It's
not
Jamie.
much. Thank you.
Are taxes higher in Lane than they are here in Benton?
Why? Could it be that way? You could vote on it?
Uh-huh.
I know.
Because it's our district, whoever lives in our
It's the
district.
joint district,
Yeah.
because it goes between multiple counties.
Making sure that that total wasn't just Benton County. or included.
No, this is,
Jamie, you can write me a check if you'd like.
yeah. The way you'll notice here, tax collected from Lane County. I subtract that out. That's probably just yours. Only house.
Not the only
Is
house.
it Yates Road?
Lincoln?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's Lincoln, but isn't that Alfie district?
It depends on which side. I think the Yates, if it goes like this, it's a little Lincoln, right? Some of,
Yeah,
I'm
most
not
of
quite
it's
sure.
Lincoln, the only property I think on Yates that Benton is Lindbergh.
Yeah, but you also have to remember we're a charter school, so even if you live on Yates, you may not pay taxes to our district
Yeah.
because.
But I was just wondering, are they a part of this?
Well, I don't know.
Or are they a part of?
They might be a part of Lincoln County. I'm not sure.
But what this committee does and what I do, I have to make sure that the levy is correct to cover the principal and
Right.
interest. That
Right.
is, and part of that is to make sure that the beginning cash is there, the levy is correct. And that I have the principal and interest correct, so that you have the dollars, because you have to pay those, you have to pay it. And the object is to have everything correct and have this roughly a flat rate, so it doesn't go up and down. Because the last thing your patrons want is all of a sudden they pay $2 per thousand, when they only paid 93 cents the previous year.
Correct.
You would really be mad.
Right.
That happened one time.
Oh,
really?
Make sure it says $1 per thousand.
It did.
It won't match.
That's what
Well-
caused us to really investigate.
Not during my lifetime.
Somebody did the wrong input to Benton County.
Well,
The
that's,
percentage.
I look at that. Yeah, I'm a taxpayer too, so I make sure that works properly. Okay. Capital projects. The revenue is on page 107. And how you have to think of this, the seismic grant, you do not get the monies until the expenses have occurred. And most of it is going to happen in July. So even though some of it's happening in June, I'm budgeting like a lot of it's going to happen in July. Okay, that's the 2 million. Then we have monies in the bond left and in the capital projects, but a lot of that's going to happen in July too, or June. Do you follow? So you have to budget the appropriations. You can't even, it's just say the money is not there after you get through the audit, doesn't mean you can expend it because you have appropriations. You're still limited to the amount of money you have on the financial statements that I show you. Okay. So what we have budgeted in here is that 200,000 to come from the general fund for the phase of the seismic. Oh, no, we were putting that 200,000 for into capital projects from the interest.
Mhm.
The 840 beginning cash, that's a combination, and the board still needs to do, it might not be there, but if the board has approves by resolution the 700,000 to go over from the general fund that's budgeted this year. And then there's 80,000 remaining in the capital projects and 60 in the bond. That comes to your 840. Okay. And if you go to the next page, 400. That's your capital projects with the 700, because I budget the whole appropriations, even though you don't expend it, but it gives you the ability to expend it, because if you put it into an unreserved, then you'd have to go through a supplemental budget to take it out. So you budget the whole thing in there. The same with the bond, there's 60,000 left in there that'll be spent during the summer. Part of it could be in June, might only be 50,000, but I made sure we had sufficient appropriations. And then this is the seismic, the 2 million. Okay. And last but not least, we've already killed the unemployment. So we're gonna bring you information on that. I don't want to, this touchy subject to me. And then the PERS reserve, like I said, those monies were here. They've been in a liability account. PERS is balanced every month to the penny. So I know these dollars are available, and they are to be used by the board if rates go up the next biennium. Because we already have the rates for this coming biennium. This would be the 27, 29. And it'll earn interest there, or you put more money in there, whatever. That is my summary of the budget, and you can go to the individual sheets for detail, or if you want more information, be sure to send an email to Kristen.
So what I would ask, board and budget committee members is if you have questions, send it to both Laura and I. And what we'll do is we'll compile a list and Dawn and I will go through them and answer the questions. And then at the next meeting, we'll bring the whole list of questions. Does that work for everybody? If you want to come in and look over it with me, just give Laura a call. We can look at it as well.
You're gonna send us the answer to the unemployment thing before next week.
Yeah, we'll look into it.
And I'll try to do a projection based on the worst case scenario, because I might have budgeted too much. So we can always change that.
And then like Dawn said, if the budget committee and the board want to do like a roof replacement fund. Or make that's something,
Now, right now, that actually asks for you to work with Mr. Albers. Give us maybe an advisement of a best guess, best
Okay.
suggestion on what we could put in there with our budget and all that. So I'm sending you an email for you to. give
Appreciate
that.
Because we know generally what the cost of replacement is. On our last. Have a general idea of how long it'll last, how much.
Mhm.
Jump in every year.
Yeah, and so he's actually gonna have a roofer come out and look at all of ours, just to have that for sure, but then. I will bring that to the next one to say, you know, they're saying our roofs in 5 to 10 years. Will need to start being replaced, and this is, you know, what we kind of think.
It doesn't have to just be used for, right?
We
It
could call it
be-
whatever.
could
You
be
could call
used
it
for like a
building-
Additional.
Capital reserve
Yeah.
fund, right? What could you call it?
Capital project.
Capital project reserve fund, so it could be anything. It
You
could
could-
be,
He wants it up. Comes for free and then we'll have it ready for whatever.
Well, you could keep the 400 fund as the capital project. But and have it as the board discretion to spend.
Yeah.
stuff.
but yeah, we could do that. But yeah, I mean, it could be anything. I mean, when we had the boiler, schools have had boilers blow up in the middle of winter and you can't have school without. You know, it could be our HVAC might not work and then we don't have heat, or, so it could be for any.
You have to be good stewards.
This is easy for you to want to that change.
Why are you looking at me, Jamie? Look at him.
What do you mean?
Why can't task? I'm just curious. If we make that additional reserve,
Yeah,
is it gonna change any of our line items in our?
well, it depends where you take it from.
Right. So I just wanna.
But anything's possible. You know what? It's putting in a number and then redoing it.
It's just an
What?
Excel
It's
sheet,
over.
JB.
The way I look at it. It's more important to have it accurate, what you come up with, rather than. I'll do it.
Okay.
Krista will just have to buy me a beer now.
All right, any
No, I'm
additional
glad they did.
questions?
Tracy, are you still alive?
I'm still here.
Okay, just checking.
Right. Well, our next meeting is.
May 20th,
Sorry,
May 20th.
May
to
20th.
6.
Yep.
at 6 PM. And so we will adjourn this evening at 7:53.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye, Gracie.
Thank you.
We're working on my